good morning, good afternoon, good evening, regardless of where you are. And the time of the day is always a good time to learn new things and to have conversations about the gospel and its teachings. Today, we're going to go over chapter 9 of the book Daily Bread, and the chapter is called People of Faith. So, before we proceed, I'd like to thank our friends at Kardec Radio for seeding this space for us to have these discussions. Kardec Radio is in several platforms and with the mission of disseminating Spiritism. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and also follow them in the different types of social media. By the way, they are in the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. So make sure you submit your comments or questions in that particular platform. And Kardec Radio also offers an app, and the app allows you to listen to podcast kinds of programs as well, all about spiritism and all about disseminating spiritism in the English language. So before we start, let's close our eyes and forget about our daily troubles, about our struggles, those uh, those issues and challenges that have been bothering us for maybe minutes, hours, and sometimes days or weeks. Be whatever they are, let's in this moment forget about those because we are doing our best as always. And we also have the help of God and of our benefactors, the spiritual benefactors. Who are always taking care of us. So let's focus on the message from the spiritual world. And always let's be open to all the inspiration and all the positive energy that surrounds us. So be it. Thank you. So, again, today's lesson is about chapter 9 of the book Our Daily Bread. It's called People of Faith, and it's based on Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. And it goes like this: Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And this is very interesting, this particular chapter of Matthew's gospel, because Jesus makes several comparisons. That's one of them, referring to those who listen, not only listen to his teachings, but especially put his teachings into practice. And he also has a comparison of those who fail to do so because it's as if they were building their houses in ground that is not strong enough to support the weight. And the way Emmanuel explains like this, I'll go over the first paragraph. The great preachers of the gospel were always seen as the greatest interpreters of Christianity in the gallery of venerable persons of faith. But this, however, only occurred when the workers of the truth, in fact, did not forget the need for vigilance, which is indispensable at the time of testimony. So it's kind of interesting when we see here that, yeah, when we think about the great preachers of the gospel, those great missionaries, they've always seen as interpreters, as people who were teaching the message. And of course, they were people of faith. But was that what actually made them people of faith? Just be disseminating the message of the gospel, was that enough? And here Emmanuel explains that, however, the most important thing is that they were workers of truth. So they did put it in practice. They did not forget the need for vigilance, which is indispensable at the time of testimony. So think about this. So these workers, these teachers, they not only talked about it, but also they did apply the proper vigilance. First of all, they're workers, right? Emmanuel classifies them as workers, and also they all were always vigilant. So, which was always in the times of testimony, we see that those spirits were not perfect spirits. However, they were able. They made mistakes as such, but they were able to, in the end, to provide the proper testimony. So we can think of the example of Peter, who made so many mistakes, especially in the beginning of his mission and as he was with Jesus. He did attack the soldier with his sword, and then he did deny Jesus 3 times as well. So he makes all those mistakes. So it was sad to see that in that particular moment of testimony, when Jesus was about to be crucified, he was the one who denied Jesus. He denied allegiance. He denied affiliation with Jesus and his message. However, later on, as that individual, as that spirit matured so much more in his experience, he was able to help so much in the creation of the first temple, of the first, well, so quote unquote, church. What is the first group of Christians who were working together to help, to provide, to be charitable, and then from that point on, he was able to proceed with his mission on earth until the end, and he was indispensable for the dissemination of the gospel. And again, not just because he was preaching, but especially because he was giving the example. Emmanuel continues here by indicating that it is interesting to note that among all of his disciples, Jesus regards most highly the ones who not only listen to his teachings, but also puts them into practice. From this, it can be concluded that individuals of faith are not necessarily those who are prodigious in words and enthusiasm, but rather who also show and project attentiveness and goodwill towards the teachings of God, of Jesus, by examining their spiritual context in order to apply them in their daily tasks. So we see here that Jesus focused on his disciples that again we're not just preaching, but also that and we're not just having enthusiasm. We're not like the best teachers or the best speakers, and we're also the most enthusiastic. But those that show attentiveness, and Emmanuel uses the word here, attentiveness and goodwill. So, two things: attentiveness and goodwill towards the teachings of Jesus. So, if you're attentive, you're focused, you're paying attention, you're that is part of your life. You're not allowing other things to interfere. So, how many times do we allow other things in our lives to interfere in our Christian actions? So many times, right? So many times we forget we're Christians and we act in the wrong manner. However, there is also the point of goodwill. So, goodwill, at least you're trying, right? So, you're focused, you're not perfect, you're trying to stay focused, and you have goodwill. You're trying, you have goodwill towards the teachings of Jesus. You have your focus on the teachings of the gospel, and you have goodwill. You're at least trying. And he continues here by examining their spiritual context. So, I mean, they're looking inwards, they're analyzing themselves and looking into the ways, into those aspects of them that could be improved, and also those aspects that were already useful in their daily tasks as the same as missionaries of the gospel. We continue here with some additional points from Emmanuel. We are confronted to note that all those involved in the field of evangelical work will be guided toward the interior marvels of the faith. However, we must always point out the elevated wisdom of those of moderation who, upon registering the teachings and advice of the glad tidings, carefully seek solutions for the problems of that day or that occasion, without ever permitting their achievements to take place outside an indispensable Christian foundation. So see here that we seek comfort to note that there is people can do, we all can do great things if we follow the gospel. We can all do great things if we were truly Christians. But again, the elevated wisdom, we gotta look for this elevated wisdom that gives us moderation, that gives us the true focus on the teachings and advice. And here Emmanuel uses the word the advice of the glad tidings. So basically the advice of what's good, what's healthy. And he mentions here carefully seek solutions for the problems of that day or that occasion. So we need to be careful when we look for our solutions. We all have problems, and problems are indispensable in our lives. Problems are indispensable in our spiritual journey because problems, first of all, they test us. We only know how great we are as spirit from a spiritual, from a moral, from an intellectual standpoint when we're confronted with challenges, because the challenges, they bring out the best that we have, our best abilities, again, both morally and intellectually. And conversely, for us inferior spirits, most of the times challenges also might bring out what's not as great in us as well. It reminds me of the book by Viktor Frankl. If you haven't had a chance to, it's not a spiritual, it's spiritist book, by the way, but if you haven't had a chance to read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and it's very beautiful because he does tell us about his experiences. Again, he was reincarnated at the time as a Jew, and he was in a concentration camp, and he narrates his experiences as someone, as an intellectual, going through all the pain, all the misery in a concentration camp during the World War II, and also all the atrocities that he experienced, that he saw. And he has some very good points about it. And he did mention that in that extreme situation, when people are in extremes, so people tend, you tend to see the very worst of people. You see people behaving in manners that are not very moral. But also he mentioned that there were some people that would go above and beyond the situation and do the most marvelous things. So regardless of the situation you're in, you always have choices. We all have choices. Should we do what's right, or should we succumb to our imperfections? So it's only always up to us to decide. And as we face our problems, we have choices. There's the quote unquote easy way out, right? There's a convenient way, but also there's the Christian, there's the moral way of resolving things. And it's important for us to notice that not always what is permissible by the laws of man, by the laws of humankind, are in alignment with the laws of God. So we gotta be extremely careful, because even though we might be doing something to solve our situation that might be legal by the eyes of humankind, they might not be in line with the teachings of Jesus here, of charity, of justice, of love, and some of the teachings that we've been absorbing not only in this reincarnation but for several reincarnations. So again, we got to be very careful, as Emmanuel explains to us here. And we can get achievements also. We can get achievements in life as we overcome our problems, as we thrive in different situations, not only as we survive, but also when we thrive under difficult circumstances. It's possible for us to also be victorious in life, and overcome our difficulties. Not only overcome, but surpass ourselves as we overcome our difficulties, but never falling outside of the Christian foundation, never falling outside of the teachings that we've been absorbing, again, through the gospel. Finally, here, Emmanuel reminds us that in all tasks, the use of the spoken word is sacred and essential. So he's reminding us that something very important here as well, that we can talk, right? We can talk the walk, as the popular saying goes. And what we express is very important. So if we talk about good things about the gospel, there's value in that. That is sacred and essential. So remember that Jesus taught us that it is what comes out of a person's mouth that defiles him or her. So what we say is very important. So if we're talking about the gospel, that's very important. Also, there's an impact on what we say that is not in line with those teachings. So if we say something also that goes against, if we say something that is hurtful to others, it also has an impact as well. So we got to think about of the sacred nature of the importance of how we express ourselves. And Emmanuel reminds us that, however, no student must ever forget the sublime value of science at the propitious moments in the superior work of perfecting his inner self, so that reflections may be heard within his soul, thus guiding his destiny. So again, it's important for us to express ourselves. It's important for us to teach and to give advice to others. Everything based on the what we know about the gospel, what we know about spiritism, all those positive things. But also, it's important for us to look inside ourselves and do some soul searching and try to understand, hey, what is it that it is in me? Am I internalizing the teachings that I've been learning? Am I internalizing of the messages that are being sent to me? So it's good for us to take a moment, of course, express ourselves and sow good things to others, use our words. However, we gotta always stop, take a step back, and look into ourselves, especially our actions. Are our actions in line with what we've been teaching? Our actions in line with what we've been studying? Our actions in line with what we've been absorbing by the examples, by being exposed to the examples of missionary spirits that came before us, and also some very good people who are around us who always give us some good examples. So we got to reflect on that. And Emmanuel finishes it up here saying, so that reflections may be heard within his soul, within our souls, thus guiding his destiny, thus guiding our destiny. So it's important again for us to take a step back and reflect on what we already know, and to determine, am I living what I preach? Right, again, using the very common, the way, the very popular saying, are you talking the walk or are you walking the walk? Right, are you really just being a Christian? Are you just being a spiritist just by saying so? Right, are you just being, because you're reading all the books about spiritism, you're studying about the gospel, does that make you a good spiritist? No, according to Kardec, the good spiritist is in line with the good person. So that's what would make us good spiritists. That's what would make us good Christians, our actions. So, and a lot of times we might think, due to our selfishness and our pride, that we're on the right path. But again, we always gotta take a step back and think about how we're behaving ourselves. Not so much as far as the messages that we've been absorbing, not as much about what we're studying, but especially how am I expressing what I know about the gospel and spiritism through my actions. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation, and we're here every Thursday at 7:30 Eastern Time to continue this talk. Thank you for your time and attention. And again, thank you, Kardec Radio, to providing us a space to have these, for us to analyze these teachings of the book, Our Daily Bread. And again, subscribe to Kardec Radio in the different social media. Follow them in the different platforms, follow them in the X platform, download the application. And Kardec Radio is providing programs like these in several platforms. So again, if you feel like helping them financially as well, if you can, if you're willing to, they are always, your financial contribution would definitely help them continue to provide works in of the dissemination of spiritism. At this time, let's close our eyes for our final prayer. We are so thankful for the teachings that we receive via Spiritism, via the teachings of the gospel, and most especially by our daily challenges and also our daily good times as well, because they teach us so many things. That's why it's important for us to to look inside of ourselves and try to analyze our behavior. It's so easy for us to judge the behaviors of others, but each one of us is responsible for his or her own destiny, his or her own evolution. Others will make mistakes the same way we make our mistakes. But it's always important for us to never give up on ourselves and always forgive our brothers and sisters because just like us, they're learning and growing. And all of us will continue progressing until we reach so much more light. We guide God with his shining light, guide us in our lives, in our different journeys, and might we find comfort in God and in our good spiritual friends in our moments of struggles, because that's when we truly show our true colors as people of faith and as people who have been learning about Spiritism and Christianity. May God's peace be with us. So be it.